Diplomacy is always the first option. I think there's been some progress and some interest, and we'll see over the next few hours and days whether progress could be made. I just want to remind everybody, Mr. President, you know this well, you have other options available to you if that doesn't work. But the bottom line is that we prefer the negotiated diplomatic route, and we're going to give it every chance to succeed. I know you're giving it every chance to succeed, Mr. President, but here's the bottom line, because I keep getting asked, what is this all about? It's very simple. Iran and these people in charge of Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and they will never have a nuclear weapon, and they most certainly will not have one as long as you're president of the United States. On that point, it's very clear.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Americans can sleep safely tonight because Marco Rubio is in charge of the State Department. Here he is with Donald Trump in an incredible cabinet conference. And of course, I want to hear what you have to say about this video, so don't forget to leave your comments below. Subscribe to this channel, and we'll talk to you on the other end of the video.
Another man doing a fantastic job, I think we all agree, is Marco. You're all over the place, right? I watched you last night in 3 different locations. So tell us about Iran.
Well, first of all, the bottom line is Iran's never going to have a nuclear weapon. And if recent events have done anything, is just remind us once again that they are the world's leading sponsor of terrorism. And they can never have a nuclear weapon. Now, the president's preference, Mr. President, your preference is told us repeatedly, is always to negotiate these things and to figure out if you can have agreements. Diplomacy is always the first option. And we continue to work on that through your envoys, Mr. Woodcock and Kushner and others, the vice president, who've been very involved. And if there's an agreement to be made, we want that to be made. I think there's been some progress and some interest, and we'll see over the next few hours and days whether progress could be made. I just want to remind everybody, Mr. President, you know this well, you have other options available to you if that doesn't work. But the bottom line is that we prefer the negotiated diplomatic route, and we're going to give it every chance to succeed. I know you're giving it every chance to succeed, Mr. President, but here's the bottom line, because I keep getting asked, what is this all about? It's very simple. Iran and these people in charge of Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and they will never have a nuclear weapon, and they most certainly will not have one as long as you're president of the United States. On that point, it's very clear. Just 2 quick things I want to touch upon. One, you touched upon the border and security. Part of securing our border is dealing with the people that are in this country unlawfully, many of whom do not want to go back to the country that they originally came from for a variety of reasons. Either we can't send them there or some judge ties us up. And one of the key things we have achieved is now 20 countries have signed third country national agreements, meaning these are safe countries where individuals who refuse to go back to their country of origin can be sent to that country instead. We've gotten 20 countries now around the world who have signed agreements that allow us to deport people to those places. What often happens when you go to the person who's here unlawfully and say, we're going to send you to this third country, is all of a sudden they decide they'd rather go back to their home country instead. So it gives the ability to enforce our laws, and we work very closely with the Department of Homeland Security on that front. Something else that I know is concerning people, because it's on the news, is Ebola. Our number one obligation, we're involved in foreign policy, but even our foreign policy, the number one priority of our foreign policy is to protect the American people. We cannot and will not allow any cases of Ebola to enter the United States. And so the State Department and other agencies represented here, the Centers for Disease Control, HHS, others, are working very, very hard to contain this crisis to the countries where it's currently located, particularly the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And so we've surged assistance to make sure that is being contained there. And obviously, multiple agencies involved here are also very involved in tracking people, just to make sure that nobody comes into this country that has Ebola and creates a problem for us. And we feel like we've got good efforts in place to do that, and Americans should feel assured that the president and his administration is doing everything we can to protect them on that front. My last point, you said I was all over the place. One of the places I stopped in last night was to initial the Trump route for prosperity in Armenia. This is a key linchpin of the peace deal that you were able to achieve between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And in addition to that, we also signed a critical minerals MOU with them and a strategic engagement one as well. So just a reminder of another war you helped to settle, Mr. President. But from that now we are seeing the emergence of a great new relationship with Armenia that really had grown stagnant for a very long period of time. So we're doing well on that front as well. Thank you.
And could I just ask you, Cuba and Venezuela, what's going on there?
Well, interesting. On Venezuela, that process continues, that 3-phase process, of obviously stabilization, recovery, and transition. I would just say, just since January 3rd of this year, okay, and I think this number's right, and Chris or Doug can correct me on this, but I think over 10 million barrels of Venezuelan oil have been delivered to the United States since the 3rd of January. That industry is being professionalized for the first time ever. It's going to the benefit of the Venezuelan people. They are selling oil in the market at market rates. The money's going to an account in the United States, controlled and monitored by Treasury, audited by KPMG, and it's for the first time ever the money's not being stolen. It's going to the benefit of the Venezuelan people. Cuba's in a lot of trouble because, unfortunately for them, it's run by a bunch of incompetent communists. And being communist is bad. Being an incompetent communist is like the worst. And but the country's been taken over by this company called Gaesa that basically controls 70% of the economy. None of the money in that company goes to help the Cuban people. None of it. So we'll be talking to them. We'll be working on it. You know, we want something good for the Cuban people, and hopefully there'll be a good outcome there for them. There needs to be. It's 90 miles from our shores. And having a failed state 90 miles from our shores is a threat to the national security of the United States.
Well, there he was, the great Marco Rubio. And I mentioned before that I think we can sleep safely at night because a guy like Marco Rubio is helping Donald Trump run the country and run the world. And he brought up some extremely important points that we have to review very carefully. Number one is, I love the statement, I'm sure you do as well, Iran will not get any nuclear weapons. That is the key. There'll be no nuclear weapons. There'll be no nuclear dust. There's no nuclear arrangement. He just told you something very important. He told you that Trump will never give up if the Iranians have uranium. He's not going to negotiate. He's not going to settle. He wants the gold. In this case, he wants the dust. Why is that? Because Iran has enriched the uranium up to 60%. There's been no other country in history that has not gone from 60 to 90% in history. This might be the first time. Look at North Korea as an example. Now they have nuclear weapons. They're a dangerous country. The difference is they're not suicidal like the Shiite Muslims, so we're not so scared of them. We don't think they're going to hurt anybody. But the main point I'm making is that he's telling the world right now there'll be no settlement of this war going on right now or this conflict without the nuclear weapons. They're going to be dismantled. The uranium is going to be taken away from them. Their ballistic missiles also have to go at this point. And of course, they have to stop supporting that ring of terror of Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas. These are mass murderers. They're mass murderers on the level of the Nazis. The difference is that we can stop them. The difference is there's governments around them that can fight back against them. The difference is that Donald Trump is protecting us from the Nazism of the 21st century, which is Islamic fundamentalism. And we watch what just happened with Iran. I mean, the last few months, they've been sending ballistic missiles to Israel, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Cyprus, and even they sent missiles 2,500 miles away into the Indian Ocean. That means the Iranians have the ability right now to strike parts of Europe. Can you imagine if the Iranians had a nuclear weapon right now, what they would do with it? 1,000%. They would bully, they would threaten that if you get near the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to nuke you. The difference is in the 1980s, the time I grew up as a teenager, there's something called MAD, M-A-D. That was the Reagan years, where basically this concept existed called mutually assured destruction. I mean, that we knew that the Soviets didn't want to die. And of course, Americans didn't want to be obliterated, so they both would not fire their nuclear missiles. The difference is the Iranians have a totally different mindset. And if you haven't traveled the Middle East, you won't understand it. This is a much more ideological mindset. This is a violent mindset. This is a religious mindset of totalitarianism. That's why it's called Islamofascism. They want to destroy the world. They believe there's going to be an apocalypse if they can defeat the Jews and the Christians. Basically, Donald Trump represents now Esav. He represents Christianity. Israel, the state, Benjamin Netanyahu represents the Jewish people. If they could take them down, they believe they're going to be victorious forever. So they don't really care about their lives. So the danger of Iran right now is very clear. Since they don't care about MAD, they have to be stopped. It's even different. I think there's a certain amount of MAD in North Korea. These people don't care if they're obliterated. In fact, they'll probably celebrate. They're going to heaven with 70 or so virgins. They're going to celebrate massive death. How do we know that? Well, in January, during the uprising, they murdered, I think within 2 days, about 40,000 innocent individuals. 40,000 shot them to death, just like the Nazis did in Poland against the Jews. They shot these people. I'm sure they were tortured, beaten up, left to die in hospitals. This is a brutal, brutal totalitarian government. I'm talking about the Islamic occupational forces of Iran right now. These are actually violent and destructive people. That's what Donald Trump is fighting against. He's fighting against the murderous rage and the hatred that these people spew. And we know it's not just rhetoric like death to the Jews, death to America, and so on. It also has to do with the money they're spending. They've been spending billions upon billions of dollars, the Iranians, not funding their country, not building technology, not expanding their farms, not even supporting their water systems. In fact, it's been shown online a few months ago that they have 5 of their biggest water reservoirs are collapsing and drying up. They have no water. In fact, there's a plan that's going to cost billions of dollars to move Tehran, which is up in the mountains south towards water resources, because they failed. They have hyperinflation. They don't have enough food. They don't have enough water. Their entire industries are collapsing. That's why every day the Strait of Hormuz is closed. They start collapsing. They're losing about half $500 million a day. The society is collapsing. And that's why Marco Rubio said very carefully that we're waiting by the hour, waiting by the minute, because they kind of have this inkling that the Iranians might break. They may break, because they don't want to lose the regime. So if they do break or feel they're going to break, they may then agree with negotiations with the United States. And Donald Trump, I guarantee you, is not going to leave at all unless we get the nuclear enrichment, unless we get the nuclear dust. That's what he's telling you, Marco Rubio. Thank God we have people like him fighting with Donald Trump for the freedom of America, for the freedom of the world. And of course, I want to hear what you have to say about this video. So don't forget to leave your comments below, subscribe to this channel, and we'll talk to you in future great videos.